It's 2009. Christopher Nolan's movie, The Dark Knight, has already grossed over $1 billion. It reinvigorated how comic book movies are made, and now Warner Brothers is going to let him do whatever he wants for his next film. So, Nolan dusts off a script that he's been working on for over a decade, Inception. It's been in his desk, maturing like a fine bottle of wine. Nolan says the idea for Inception started all the way back in his teen years in the 80s. His original idea involved dream sharing and the use of music during those dreams, and it was originally conceived as a horror movie. He likened earlier versions of Inception to the Nightmare on Elm Street TV series, Freddy's Nightmares, and its use of characters waking up in a dream within a dream within a dream. He thought that was a terrifying trope he could explore, and in the process, he brought one of the most original blockbuster films to the big screen. Now sit back, relax, grab a glass of champagne, and let's steal some secrets from Christopher Nolan's Inception. Dom Cobb is a thief of dreams. His unique talents have turned him into a sought-after player in the world of corporate espionage. But it's also made him a wanted man, which threatens everything he holds dear. After fleeing the country and leaving his children behind, he finally gets a shot at redemption. Dom gets hired by the mysterious Saito to perform Inception on his rival's son, Robert Fisher. Inception involves planting an idea in Fisher's subconscious. Cobb and his talented crew must pull off the heist of a century, and if they pull it off, Dom gets to return to his children. But no amount of careful planning or expertise can prepare them for a mysterious enemy who seems to anticipate their every move. An enemy that only Cobb could have foreseen, his late wife, Maul. In the book The Nolan Variations, written by Tom Schoen, I found out that Christopher Nolan is an experienced lucid dreamer. Lucid dreaming is where you are aware that you're dreaming and can control what you do within that dream. Back in his pre-grad days at University College of London, Nolan, who had prepaid for meals before the semester had even started, would get up in the morning and head to breakfast before 9 a.m. After eating, he would go right back up to his dorm and go to sleep until 1 or 2 p.m. During this time, he would be in a half-asleep, half-awake state of dreaming, and he found that this made it easy to control those dreams. To quote the Nolan Variations, Christopher said this about his experience as the master of his own dreams. I remember lucid dreams where I would see there was a book on the table, and I would go and look at the book, and I'd be able to read the words, and it might even make sense. So you say, okay, I'm writing this book as I'm reading it at the same time. I found that to be an amazing thing. Other times, I've had dreams that have informed narrative choices. I first dreamed the end of the Dark Knight trilogy, the idea of somebody taking over Batman and being in the Batcave. Okay, so Christopher Nolan literally uses the power of dreaming to make his movies. It makes a ton of sense. After all, what can be more powerful for building a movie than your own unlimited dreamscape? After reading about all of this, I knew I had to go test Nolan's dream routine out for myself. I spent a week trying to achieve a lucid dream so that I could use it as a tool when writing my next movie. I'll leave a link below if you want to see how that experiment turned out. Christopher Nolan originally pitched Inception in 2002 to Warner Brothers after his movie Insomnia had been completed. By then it wasn't a script, it was more of an evolving outline. One major element was in place though. This would be a heist film. Warner Brothers liked the idea and wanted a script to be delivered as soon as possible. However, Nolan felt like it would be better for him creatively if he developed it as a speculative script rather than a commissioned assignment. So he embarked on his writing journey, assuming that it would take a couple of months to finish. He was wrong. It all comes back to that desk of his. Inception would come in and out of his desk drawer over the next 8 years. Each time, new and improved story elements found their way into the script, making it more and more like the movie we all know and love today. Originally, Dom Cobb, doesn't that sound like an insult you would throw at someone? Like, listen to me, you Dom Cobb. Anyway, Dom Cobb, the character played by Leonardo DiCaprio, originally had immense guilt from being responsible for the death of his business partner. As the years went by, Nolan decided that there needed to be something deeper at play with his main protagonist. You see, The Dark Knight would end up influencing the entire core of Inception on a story level. After that initial pitch for Inception to Warner Brothers in 2002, Nolan found himself grinding to a halt about 80 pages into the script. He felt that it never went anywhere fulfilling after those 80 pages. Something was missing. After an intense shooting schedule of 123 days on The Dark Knight, Christopher Nolan realized something. He missed his family. Although he had his wife and kids around for most of the shoot, his wife Emma was pregnant and gave birth to their son Magnus in the last 2 months of filming. This meant that Nolan was separated from his family for 2 long months, which he says is the longest they've ever been apart. Even though he was able to be there when Magnus was born, it really tore him apart that he had to leave his family behind to finish the movie. The magnitude of this emotional event would change Inception on a guttural level. No longer would Dom be guilted over a business partner. Instead, the business partner morphed into his wife, Mal. Not only that, she and Dom now had 2 children that he was desperately trying to get back to. That emotional change to the script is what takes this movie from interesting concept to something more resonant and haunting. I think when most people picture Christopher Nolan, they see a man who is technically precise and overly intellectual. A guy who wears suits on set and has an English accent and is smarter than everyone around him. But I think they rarely picture the emotional and loving family man that he apparently is. Now that the emotional stakes were in place, the script was finally finished. Sort of. Inception was the first movie since Memento to be written solely by Nolan. And even on Memento, he was basing his script on his brother Jonathan's short story, Memento Mori. With Inception, Nolan was going out on a limb and risking a lot. If this movie sank at the box office, it would rest squarely on his shoulders alone. And you know what? Warner Brothers deserves a lot of credit for shelling out $160 million on an original sci-fi mindbender like this. Something I find fascinating about Inception is the casting of Leonardo DiCaprio. No one can deny the immense star power that he brings to every movie he makes. This film also marks a rare occasion where Leo played a more traditional action hero role. I feel like we got a stripped down version of him in this movie. No accent, no period piece to hide behind. It's the same emotional intensity you come to expect from DiCaprio, but in a big budget, action summer tentpole, which I haven't really seen from him since. It can't be stated enough how integral Leo's input was to this movie. Yes, Christopher Nolan was the sole writer on this film, but if you had to give anyone else a writing credit, it would be DiCaprio. He really pushed for and demanded that Nolan expand upon the emotional journey of Dom. DiCaprio brought a lot of emotion to this character. You feel it in every frame of the movie, and without that, you'd get something closer to Tenet, a movie that felt a bit cold and overloaded with exposition, and sorely lacking in emotional weight. Don't get me wrong, Inception has a lot of exposition. Most heist movies do, but it's more effective than Tenet because of the quality of the acting and the core of what's driving Dom's character, which is getting back to his family.
Paul, what the f*** are you doing, man?
I'm Vin Diesel. Family.
Leo worked with Nolan for months, helping him to hone Dom's story arc. He never physically wrote anything, but he would give notes and discuss ways to make the character's emotional journey more fulfilling. For example, the scene where it's revealed that Dom and Mal lived a full life in the dream world, growing old together, that was one of DiCaprio's contributions. The scene where Dom and Mal are lying on the train tracks was borrowed from something Christopher Nolan and his wife Emma did in real life. Years earlier, they took a picture of themselves laying on some train tracks while visiting California on a holiday. That's cute. Casting filled out with Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Marion Cotillard, Cillian Murphy, Michael Caine, Tom Hardy, Ellen Page, now known as Elliot Page, Ken Watanabe, and Dileep Rao. The cast had to be pitch perfect for the group dynamic to work. We essentially have Ocean's 11 set in a dream world, so the chemistry had to be just right. And it was just right. After watching it, you knew Tom Hardy was going places. He was very distinct and instantly felt like a star, even though I hadn't really seen him in anything before. Actually, I had, in Star Trek Nemesis, but I had no idea that that was Tom Hardy. Joseph Gordon-Levitt was a revelation in this movie. For a long time, he was most known for his earlier acting career in movies and TV shows like Angels in the Outfield, Third Rock from the Sun, Halloween H2O, and 10 Things I Hate About You. But in the years leading up to Inception, Levitt had been turning in some great comedic and dramatic roles. Movies like Brick, Mysterious Skin, and 500 Days of Summer. These roles showed that he had really grown into his talent as an actor. When he came into audition for the part of Arthur, Levitt decided to wear a full-on suit. It's interesting because he only received a brief description of the character, but he got a gut instinct that wearing a suit to the meeting would be a good idea. Always follow your gut, people. By the way, the part of Arthur was almost played by James Franco. His stunt work in this movie was really impressive. He showed a ton of enthusiasm when it came to the physical aspects of his character Arthur. In fact, the first glimpse we ever got of Inception was the zero-gravity hallway fight that was featured in the teaser trailer. I remember thinking Inception was going to be like The Matrix, which in a way it was. That fight sequence was very much inspired by the centrifuge scene in Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey. It was filmed in a similar way as well by using a giant Ferris wheel rig to give the illusion of warped gravity. Joseph Gordon-Levitt spent weeks training in a rotating corridor described as a giant hamster wheel. Director Christopher Nolan jokingly called it an incredible torture device. But the resulting footage was unique, confusing, and captivating, even for those who knew how it was done. Also, it was dangerous. If Levitt had fallen at any time during the stunt, he would have broken something, or worse. Look at the similarities between Inception's characters and its film crew. Dom is the director. Obviously, Nolan used his lead character as a surrogate for what he does for a living. Like a director, Dom assembles the best crew money can buy, and they all create an imaginary world together. Arthur is the producer. He helps the director get everything organized and accomplished. Ariadne is the production designer. She creates the setting for the dream world. Eames is the actor, a master of disguise that interacts with the characters of the dream world. Saito is the movie studio. He funds the whole operation. Fisher is the target audience. He's just along for the ride, experiencing what the crew has created for him. I'm not quite sure what you would call Yusuf, but in the 70s, he'd be known as the Pusher. Hans Zimmer previously worked with Nolan on Batman Begins and The Dark Knight in collaboration with composer James Newton Howard. But Inception was the first Christopher Nolan film where Zimmer was the sole composer. He made such an impactful score with the use of the iconic blaring horns and the guitar riffs created by Johnny Marr from the Smiths. The "wham" sound effect became a popular trope in movie trailers for years after it was released. That trend finally died down in the last decade, but for a while there it was getting ridiculous. I also find it interesting to note that both Zimmer and Nolan are self-taught in their professions. Nolan never went to film school, and Hans Zimmer never went to music school. The marketing team created an online game called Mindcrime, where users could play as either an architect or an extractor. A motion comic prequel called The Cobalt Job was released on the official Inception website at the time. Later, it was included on the Blu-ray Special Features disc. Oh, and speaking of Blu-ray, I found out that there's an Easter egg you can unlock on the Special Feature disc. So you just load in the Special Feature disc. When the menu comes up, type in 528491. A picture of Cobb's top shows up. When you click on it, a prequel comic will play that depicts the beginning heist with Saito, and it just shows how all that came about. I love finding these hidden gems, it's so fun. Also, a mysterious dream share manual was published to Wired.com at the time. All of these different clues and marketing tactics hinted at the plot of the film in a creative and interactive way. There was a video where Nolan interviews 3 different dream researchers. 2 of them were real, and 1 was an actor set in the world of Inception. When it came out on July 16, 2010, it cemented Nolan as the biggest filmmaker on the planet. This movie was pivotal in showing that he could make a universally successful blockbuster without Batman being involved. Inception grossed $839 million at the worldwide box office on a budget of $160 million. For Christopher Nolan, the sky wasn't the limit anymore. Space was, and he would conquer that within the next 4 years. But we'll get into that in another video. Hey, I'm Scotty D. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I think you'll like this one too. See you next time.